Welcome to the Empowered Money Girl, where we break down the barriers to financial confidence, celebrate women's wins, and reveal the secrets to living boldly and well. I'm your host, Josette Mandela. Today's guest is Angela Healy. Angela is a visionary leader and CEO with 30 years of experience in real estate investment, property management, business development, and commercial banking. She's co-owner of Avenue West Managed Corporate Housing and Avenue West Global, an enterprise that combines corporate housing, property management, and real estate services. Under her leadership, Avenue West has grown from a small real estate brokerage to a national award-winning company and seven-time honoree on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list. With managed properties in 500 cities and over 150 million in residential real estate, Angela's strategic vision and unwavering dedication to excellence continue to drive the company's growth and solidify its position as a leader in corporate housing industry. Please welcome the trailblazing and inspiring Angela Healy.
Well, thank you so much, Isette. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. So, Angela, can you take us back to the beginning? What was your path that got you to where you are today?
My path really started when I was in elementary school. My parents, they had full-time jobs, but they added rental properties to their portfolio that they fully managed themselves to supplement their income. And so I got to see it firsthand. I went with my dad everywhere whenever he had a maintenance item. I remember crawling underneath a house one time holding the flashlight so he could fix plumbing. And I just always loved it. I saw that they were able to put four children through a private college with the income that they generated from these rental properties. And so I knew it was something that I wanted to get involved with as I grew up. I also had a passion to be a commercial lender. So I started with that career first and did that for about 10 years. But ultimately, the draws to real estate were pulling on me and jumped into it, in kind of the mid 90s. So,
Well, that's kind of a big jump. You were in
yes,
commercial lending where you had pretty much a steady paycheck, and then all of a sudden you decided, nope, I'm going out on my own. I'm going to do real estate.
yes. And commercial lending around that time, there was a lot of bank consolidation. And, so yes, I did have a steady job. I always was able to land on my feet through those mergers and acquisitions that were occurring, but I never really felt like I was in true control of my own destiny. And I always wanted to be. And it was definitely a leap of faith to jump out and leave that and go for the unknown, which was, how am I going to get a paycheck every month? To be able to afford the bills. But the nice thing about property management, which I think a lot of people think there are a lot of not nice things about property management, but the nice thing about property management is you can have steady recurring income versus a real estate agent, which is absolutely dependent on the very next deal.
Okay, and that is an interesting distinction is like you say, managing the properties, there is that recurring income as long as you have a tenant.
Yes,
Whereas when you're the real estate agent and the one either buying or selling the property, it's a one-time hit.
it is. It is. I mean, it can be a big one-time hit, which is nice, but and the managed properties, it's smaller amounts of money, but you're hopefully spreading it over a larger group of properties, so that if one is vacant or a couple are vacant, you still have others that are occupied. So there is some sort of resemblance of a steady stream.
So a lot of people think corporate housing and they're thinking like apartment buildings and things like that, but you tend to move more, I guess we'll call it higher end, where you're looking at not only smaller units like that, but you're also looking at single family homes.
Correct. So traditional corporate housing, like our competitors in the space, they will rent an apartment, put rental furniture in, set up all the utilities, get the internet going, and they will rent that as their product. Um, The way that we look at it is we want to provide the corporations with a better experience. So if we're able to match the property management, so we work with property owners that have homes, townhomes, condos, and we're able to put permanent furniture in there, really have it nicely designed and put all the utilities together. We feel that our product provide somebody with a better home experience. It's more like what they're used to, where they're coming from if they're relocating or if they're traveling on assignment. Because they could have a home with a yard. What if they have children and they have pets that need the backyard, things like that. So moving is stressful enough on the relocating um, family unit. How do we make it less stressful? And so by matching those two together, we feel that the corporation can win because it's a better, higher end product. But then also the property owner can win because they're able to provide that same piece of real estate instead of offering it unfurnished at a much lower rate. They're able to offer it midterm rental, fully furnished at a higher rate and maximize the income that they can get off of that property.
And that sounds lovely, especially if I'm someone that has a piece of property that said, I'm I don't I'm not ready to sell it yet, but I don't know what to do with it. And
Yes.
you can help them actually get some income from that property rather than just leave it empty.
Exactly. And the corporate housing is very specific on what type of property. So, not every property would qualify as a corporate rental. But if your property does qualify, it can be the highest and best use for that property because you can generate the most income. So, there are certain properties that are definitely nightly Airbnb. If you're on the beach or you're in a vacation destination, where you can really maximize the rental per night on that property, that would be the highest and best use of that property. Or if you're, kind of in the middle of traditional suburbia, that home, an unfurnished lease might be the best and highest use for that property. But if your home or condo or townhome is near kind of a corporate center and there are large corporations around you in that area that relocate employees or bring consultants in on assignment, really looking at that midterm rental could be your best option. And a lot of cities are kind of pushing back on the nightly rentals. Like they're running out of housing for people to live in the city. So they're saying, okay, we're not going to do Airbnb nightlies with these core city center properties anymore. We're going to put the restrictions on that. So if you already have a property that's fully furnished and you're getting those restrictions put on you, instead of removing the furniture or yes, selling the property, maybe looking at midterm rentals is the right option.
So in the beginning, when you got into that space, did you just wake up one morning and say this is it, or did you work for somebody else for a while?
So when I got out of college, I moved to San Francisco, and um, because of my parents, they're like, "You need to buy something right away." Of course, San Francisco is extremely expensive, but I did. I did what they said, and at 24 years old, I purchased my first one-bedroom condo. And it was a lot of fun, but I was instantly house poor. And I was eating ramen noodles every day of the week. I, could barely do anything. If I went out with friends, it was to the beach, something free. And I didn't like being house poor. It was very stressful. And someone had approached me and said, well, what if you moved out and rented it to this corporation who needs a property in the building? And I was like, well, I could do that. And I went and I found an apartment, which was a lot cheaper. And I pieced together, some dorm room furniture in my own place, but I left my nicer furniture in the property for the corporation and I rented it out that way. And what started out as a month to month lease agreement, they ended up being there for 5 years. Now, that's not always normal. So I want to put a little asterisk there, but that's how I got into it was, wow, this really worked. And I was able to, pay for the mortgage. I was able to, live more comfortably over here. And while I needed to make sure that everything was up to date and if something broke, it instantly needed to be repaired. Um, but the amount of attention that I needed to give it was even less because the person living there was a homeowner somewhere else. They were just coming in Monday through Friday and leaving on the weekends. And so the wear and tear on the property was pretty minimal. And I was in commercial lending at the time. And so I started scratching my head and I'm like, this has to be a bigger industry. And so, I did find out about it, started partnering with another company that was doing it, and eventually started working for them, which is Avenue West. And then in 2010, my husband and I, we purchased the company. So,
Oh,
yes. hmm
so that's fascinating how you s- find an idea, it works, you join the company, you help them grow, and then one day they decide that for whatever reason the founders are ready to move on and
Right.
they say, okay, I'm guessing you had right of first refusal or
I did not, but
oh.
was certainly kind of their top employee. So I was definitely the person that they looked to first. And actually at the time I thought I would just always work for them, but it turned out that they were going another direction, and I was like, oh, absolutely, we'll do this. So and at that time, my husband was not in corporate housing. He was working for Kaiser, and I said, okay, but if we do this, we're doing it together. I'm not going to jump into this and do it all on my own. And so we took that opportunity, and we both work in the business. And it also then gave us an opportunity when we decided to have children to be able to kind of job share in the beginning, where he would work one day and I would work the next. And then we would swap being home with the children so that they didn't need to be in daycare. And it's given us an opportunity, even, I mean, now, you know, the kids are 12 and they're in sports activities. So if there's a game, okay, we might work that night, but, we're
Mm.
able to both be there because we own our own business, and, we're able to make that flexibility so that the family can come first.
And that is one of those advantages to having your own business is that if you figure out how to make all the things happen that need to happen, you have that flexibility and you can structure it and have the team to support.
Correct. Absolutely. But it's not for the faint of heart. There are definitely times where, we're head down, we're working, long hours to get things done, especially in the summer. Our kids are home from
Mm.
school for the summer, but summer is our busy season. More people relocate in the summer than they do other times of the year. And so, it's kind of all hands on deck for the whole office during this time frame, which includes us. And so it does have its gives and its takes, but if you're able to kind of manage the stress that comes with owning your own business and all the pieces that come with that, there are some great perks. So, yes.
So if you go to a dinner party and somebody asks, what do you do? What do you say?
Well, we're a real estate agency that manages properties for midterm rentals, fully furnished corporate rentals. And a lot of people kind of look at me a little sideways, and I'm like, well, it's kind of like Airbnb, but for corporations that are staying a minimum of 30 days.
Okay, so it in the beginning, they kind of look at you and say, not sure what that is. So I like the Airbnb reference because it seems like everybody knows what an Airbnb is.
Exactly. Even though we were here before Airbnb, but they are definitely more known than corporate housing and midterm rentals. It's kind of what I consider one of the best kept secrets. You do have to explain what you do, but yes, there's competition, but it's not like there's millions of companies out there that are in this space. And, really, if we're able to service the corporations and provide them with the quality properties that they're looking for and the service related to that. So if something breaks, we're there right away. We've been able to develop long-term relationships with corporations who now just come to us seeking their properties and versus out shopping and looking around. So it gives a little bit more steady income to the overall company.
So in the beginning, when you were figuring out properties and how do I even do this? The cash flow was probably fairly inconsistent. How did you make all of that work?
Sure. So, you know, you you're really looking for properties um, that you think are going to be in the target market. So we started because most of corporate housing, about 70% of corporate housing, is one bedroom properties. So we started with the condos and looked for buildings in downtown Denver that we thought would meet the corporation's needs. So security is the number one concern. So, does it have a 24-hour doorman? Does it have key fob access? Is the parking secure in the building? They're not walking across the street or, doing something like that. And then, does it have a pool? Does it have a gym? What are the amenities associated with it? And then, inside the property itself, it needs to have kind of high end finishes. So, was there granite? Was there stainless steel? Is it carpet, or is it some sort of hardwood or laminate flooring? What are the features and functionality within it? Does it have a balcony so that they can have some outdoor space that is also considered secure? Um, so looking around Denver, we found a couple of key buildings, and then we started targeting those buildings in terms of our marketing. So, getting to know the concierge and having them know us. We started managing a unit in the building. They see what we're doing, they might refer us, that kind of thing. And so the other thing too is that by having properties all in one building, sometimes I'll have a property owner say, I want to be the only property in this building that does this. But that is not the correct thinking. When you have multiple properties in the building, then when a corporation comes and says, okay, we've got 10 people coming, we want them all in the same building, then that's your go to building for that project. And so having them kind of cluster together, you're creating your own marketplace. And it just begins to kind of evolve and become more word of mouth versus having to hard target a building once you get there.
And I really like that, having clusters in a building. Now it sounds like in your model, you and Avenue West do not own all the properties, that you actually are a broker, if you will, between people that own the property. So it's not, well, do you own any properties?
So I initially started out owning some properties, but then I was finding that some property owners were like, well, are you going to give preference to your property over my property? And so over time, I have sold those and just kind of reinvested back into the business with the full focus on managing other people's properties, so that there isn't that kind of perception of preferential treatment on the properties. Um, but yes, we are a real estate agency. We are a broker, and we are kind of brokering between the two, the landlord, between the landlord and the tenant, and we're the one matching that agreement together. But it is an exclusive relationship with the property owners. They they rely on us to 100% of the time rent the property on their behalf.
Okay. And if somebody was thinking, well, that sounds like something I might like to do,
Mhm.
is how would somebody get started doing
Sure.
something like that?
So there's a couple of angles with that. If they have property that they want to put into the program, they can certainly reach out, let us know. Um, because with corporate housing, there are basically two customers, right? There's two sides. You need the tenant and you need the property. And we have a lot of the corporate relationships already established. And that is kind of a taller hill to climb. But if you have the property, you could at least get started by placing it with us. Or if you're interested in doing it on your own, there are websites like corporatehousingbuyowner.com, furnished finders, things like that, where you can actually put your property there where you're managing it yourself. You're just marketing it to that kind of community. Furnished finders, they really focus on like traveling nurses and that kind of thing. Whereas that can be kind of the lower end of the payment pool, if you will. The higher you go, up to larger corporations, the more you can get for the same property. So, if you can get into the Fortune 100 companies, they're going to pay a little bit more for the property than a traveling nurse who gets a stipend. And they're going to try to minimize that expense the most they can, because if they can pay less than the stipend, they get to keep the money. So there is kind of a totem pole on who pays the most, but certainly if you're interested in doing it yourself that way, you can do that, or you can hire a company like ours to manage the property and match it with the relationships that we already have. But if you are a real estate property manager already and you're interested in adding midterm rentals to your portfolio, we'd love to talk to you as well, because maybe you're in a city where we aren't, and we could partner and we could take our clients and you could find the property owners, and try to match them that way as well.
And even if we broaden it a little bit, and rather than just looking at the corporate housing market, if a woman is thinking, I think I might want to do something with real estate, do you have any recommendations on, do you buy a single family home, a duplex, or does it matter?
Yes, it does matter. And it really depends on the city that you're in and which market you're targeting. Are you targeting unfurnished rentals? Are you targeting midterm? Are you targeting short-term Airbnbs? What you want to look at the seasonality associated with short-term Airbnbs. Like, you might be on a beach, but it's in Maine, and really that means summer. People aren't going to the beach in Maine in the summer. So you could be very seasonal. Whereas, if you might be in the beach in a warmer area, Miami or something, it might be more not seasonal. You might have more year-round rentals. So just kind of knowing the market that you're going into. Obviously, doing it yourself, you will always make more money because you're not going to pay a management fee for somebody else to do it for you. But then you have to realize that, okay, how many hours am I going to be putting in to make that money? And is that exchange worth it? And yeah, but maybe you want to, buy a vacation rental because you want to live in it part of the time. And then of course you're taking away from some of your income because you're probably going to want to live there during peak season when you could get the most out of the rental. So really decide what your objectives are. Are you trying to maximize the cash flow, or are you doing it for personal reasons as well? And then once you've chosen an area and you look at the overall landscape, which sector am I in? Then when you determine a sector, so if you're determining unfurnished long term, you're probably looking at a single family home because you don't want to have HOA fees. You don't want to have, some of the expenses that go with maybe having a condo. Now, some of that is offset by, okay, now do we have to do stuff with the yard? Do we have to, how much is the insurance? Things like that. So there are offsets. So you want to just really look at all of the costs associated with each type of property. Maybe if I bought a single family home, I could only have one. Whereas if I bought a condo, I could have two or three, and then might not have vacancy all at the same time. So would I be able to still have some income because two of them are rented and one is not? Whereas with a single family home, the moment that goes vacant, then you're without income until it's occupied again.
That is so helpful. So in the beginning, when you were running the business, did you ever have a gap where the business felt kind of successful, but when it came to your finances, it just didn't feel that secure, that you were always feeling like you were teetering on the edge.
Yes, corporate housing is seasonal. So while we don't go completely vacant in the month of December, December people aren't starting new projects, they're not relocating. So we do have some seasonality to what we're doing. So we definitely need to kind of budget over the summer to make sure that you can, get through the month of December. But then, we had COVID occur. So we were in the middle of our highest income that we'd ever had. We were, really humming along quite nicely when COVID hit. And if you think about it, all corporations immediately required all their employees to come home.
Yeah.
So everyone staying with us suddenly was like, okay, I need to give you my 30-day notice. We're leaving. And certainly there was a panic moment there when I looked at my husband and I said, everybody is leaving in 30 days. And what are we going to do? Um, and it took a little bit. And we started to think about, what's going on? What are people looking for? And maybe a week later, we started pivoting and we said, okay, yes, the corporation is calling you home into New York, into LA, into very hot spot cities. We started reaching out to our corporations more from an individual perspective and said, I know, XYZ Corporation isn't paying for this, but would you and your family, since you get to work remotely, want to come to an area that is less of a hot spot than New York or San Francisco or LA? And that really kind of sparked some some additional interest in the properties. Oh, yes, I could, live in an area where I can go outside and I can, my or maybe they lived in a home that didn't have a home office where suddenly, a couple of kids and two adults are working from home and they're all on top of each other. So let's get out of our, maybe 1,000 square foot and let's go over here to 2,500, 3,000 square feet where everyone would have a room with a desk. And we added desks to all of the properties and, really trying to accommodate working from home and kids schooling from home and just accommodating everything that they were going to need. And we really kind of did a major pivot in that 30-day period of time and were able to make that work. But it was definitely very scary, especially that first week when we just thought, okay, we're done, everyone's leaving and we're not going to have any income in 30 days. So um yeah.
What an amazing pivot, though, to realize that, wait a minute, I've got all these people going places that maybe I can turn that into a positive and say, look, I've got all these properties that are in nice locations that
Mhm.
now your company's saying that you have to work from home because of COVID.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yes, yes. And please come here. Yes, let me help you. But yeah, it was and then eventually, we started seeing corporations begin to contemplate, okay, we need to do stuff for certain of our employees as well because we want to keep them happy. And it's very hard for them to pay for two income, two homes. And so we did see corporations after, maybe 90, 120 days really start to accommodate some of their employees that way as well. So, uh,
So there's some things that real estate entrepreneurs get wrong when it comes to their own personal wealth.
they get a big win and they spend it all instead of thinking of it as maybe this is my income for the next couple of months. I think that what they need to do is determine, what is my required income for the year and kind of put that piece aside. And then if they get a bigger win on top of that, then don't purchase things over a monthly plan, purchase things outright. So, okay, I'm really looking at this new furniture set that might cost me $10,000. Don't buy it on a monthly plan and try to amortize it over, oh, maybe I'll get a sale in the future. Wait until you get the sale and then buy that and buy it outright. Just because your income is so unpredictable.
That that is great advice because, like you say, if you don't have the money in the account now, hoping and praying, that's not a good answer.
Well, and it also adds to the stress. And whenever you're stressed, you're never working at your optimal performance. And that can come out. You can make mistakes, really pushing, so, oh, you really need to buy this property because I
Mm.
need the income tomorrow. Instead of really helping your client find the perfect right property for them, even if it took an extra 30 days for them to do so.
So besides the real estate, do you actively invest in anything else?
I have my IRA, my 401k from when I was a banker, that kind of thing. But most of what I'm doing is investing back in my company. Because I really see that, it's really more of a lifestyle business, not like someday, oh, someone's going to pay me millions and millions of dollars for this, but someday could my children step into my shoes and take it over? So how do I make it as seamless as possible so that I don't have to be the one to operate it. So right now we're investing in some additional software where everything is going to be in one system. Like well, before this year, we had everything kind of in like five different systems. So, and the systems did not talk to each other.
Right.
So while it was operating and it worked, and everyone knew what to do and where to get the information, it just wasn't optimal. And so how are we able to get it all into one system so that each one of my employees can be operating more efficiently? And we've really been using AI to help my programmer come up and create the one system, and really looking at the growth that we're doing. And so I don't really want to add people to the growth, and I don't want AI to take away my people. I just want AI to make my people more productive. I don't want them having to search for things in five different systems or double enter things because what's over here needs to be over here as well. How do we get it all to talk together? And so I think that investment that we're making right now, can get to the point where, okay, does Angela have to be the one to do this? Or is the computer going to do it? Or is it so simple that other people could do it instead of me so that I'm no longer the bottleneck in our company? And maybe I could really take a nice vacation.
There you go. And that's a great way to look at using AI is using it as a helper, not as something that's going to get rid of people, because I don't think that's ever, well, I'm going to try to be a little more charitable. I don't think that's really why AI was created, that it really was created to be a helper, but there
Mhm.
do seem to be the dark side as well, that there
Oh,
are
sure.
people out there that are seeing it as a take over the world.
Sure. Yes. Well, and I'm in the hospitality industry. So having a person on the other end of the line is so important when somebody's having a meltdown, or somebody, their internet went out and they're on a deadline, and how do I get this fixed? What can we do as people to be, loving and caring and understanding and providing them the empathy that they need to get through that? And then realizing even though I might have systems over here helping me, that system could never replace that empathy or that And in some cases, I don't even think it can replace the full knowledge. Like if you know all of your properties so inside and out, and someone says, "Well, this is what I have. I've got this, this, and this," and I can think about my properties exactly which one or three I can quote to them, that will meet that need. Like this one might have a day bed in it, or a sleeper sofa, but it still has the office. So when grandma comes to visit, she has a place to stay, but then when she's up and about, yes, that office can still be used as an office. Whereas I don't know if a computer will always 100% see those nuances within a property.
Yeah, agreed. So if you had one message you could give to women listening today about owning their own independence, what would it look like?
Well, one, really understand yourself. I, so when we went through this, there was times when I would have panic attacks because, am I going to get this done? Or, is all of this going to work out? And, and it really took me years to kind of figure that out within myself so that I wasn't, having medical issues related to all of the stress associated with this. And I'm going to even say, I'm going to admit I'm not 100% there even yet today. So know yourself first, and whether you can handle the kind of stress that comes with owning your own business. But if you're that driven person, and if you can do that, trust your gut and go for it. It's probably the best thing my husband and I ever did, even if there are times when we question ourselves. And there will be times. And the hard thing, definitely get with a group of CEOs that you can talk to and you can bounce ideas off of, that you have a trusted group around you, because you can't necessarily talk about everything to your employees. That some of that conversation is not appropriate to go downhill. So you need that trusted advisor group to be able to bounce ideas off of, when things are kind of financial mission critical. And so make sure you have those people.
So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and a huge thank you to Angela Healy for sharing her story and reminding us to trust our gut. And you can live your best life. And don't forget to have a trusted advisor handy so that you can really dial in what is it you want, and see if running your own business really makes sense for you. And if you found value in this conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the Empowered Money Girl with your friends. The more we spread these stories, the more women we can empower to live boldly, both financially and in every part of life. Until next time, keep thriving. And remember, your journey to empowerment starts with you.